Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg and it's the 10th day of April 2024. Hard start today. I got to the barn early this morning because we have several people around us that are not feeling well. So I was up early this morning and now I'm trying to get my interview hat back on again, but here we are. Anyhow, today welcome to Liberty Essentials with Bill Mohr and Ralph the IT guy. And after them we have Todd Buffington on from United Sovereign Citizens. That's part of the Harry Howry group. So anyhow, I'm going to bring these guys right on and we're going to get started. Morning, guys. How you doing?
Good morning, Donna. I'm doing pretty good. How about y'all?
Doing good. How about you, Ralph?
Oh, doing good.
You guys were asking me how Karen was doing or why she hasn't been here the last 2 weeks. Well, I've been trying to be pretty easy on Karen because she hasn't been feeling very well either. So hopefully she'll be back up to par and be able to be back on, but she needs a rest right now. So what are we talking about this morning? We had an outstanding debate this weekend, and I really want to thank Mark Sosnowski for getting the venue where we were, as well as everyone else that's on the executive committee for the Constitution Party in the state of Michigan, which is the U.S. Taxpayers Party. I thought it was outstanding, and I'll tell you why. You know how you go through things, and you learn as you go. Right? You learn new ways of doing things, and you have to be able to say, okay, we weren't doing as good yesterday as we are today because we're learning along the way. Well, the fact that we were able to get this up and going in a video format, in a Zoom format, was outstanding because we had 6 candidates there. And we had so much go on this that other states were watching this, and more candidates have come out of the woodwork. And I believe that everyone should be heard, no matter who it is. I believe that the rightful president of the United States, President Donald Trump, should be heard. I believe that even though I fundamentally am disgusted with and cannot stand Biden, I think Biden should be heard because we put them all on a lineup next to each other and or listen to their answers. We're going to be able to sift through the nonsense of every single one of these candidates, find out if they're for real or not, and listen to the best answers and not go with who a party tells us to go with, but to just listen to what they say. No pundits, no spinning, just put their stuff out there and let the American people, we the people, decide for themselves who is the best candidate without manipulation. I really think this is important. So I was really thinking about how to do this, and I know I talked to you guys before we got online this morning, but I really think that we should absolutely have another stab at this. But the way that I think it should be done is give all the candidates, anybody out there that wants to run for president. I would be willing to do this on Brandenburg News Network, and I don't get paid for this. So, I mean, this is just volunteer work for all of us to get the truth out there. But I think what we should do is give each candidate like kind of like a 15-minute segment right now, and not let them see what each other is answering, because the last person to respond in a debate or when there's extra people, they springboard off of what each other says. And they're learning on the fly while they're in this, rather than having a thoughtful time to actually be able to process and give their own answers. It's all manipulated, it's all rigged, and they're all under stress, so they can't really be themselves. And you get kind of a feel for some of it for disqualification. But there should be rounds where you let them all talk, give them, start out with 15 minutes for each person and say, we're going to give you 2 to 3 minutes to tell everybody who you are, to communicate a little bit about yourself, and then go into questions that are formatted to find out what do they actually know about the job, and do it in an interview manner format, rather than in these debates, because debates really don't test anything. And when you go into, and this is a job interview, it should be treated as such. When are you ever in a job interview in your life? When have you ever seen it where all the people who are vying for that position are sitting in the same room trying to discuss who is, discussing or debating in a fight mentality like Jerry Springer, where they're all punching at each other instead of actually giving an actual honest and real answer. I've not seen it done yet. So I really think that we should do this as the Constitution Party of the state of Michigan, reach out to all of the candidates, all of them, anybody that wants to come forward. I think there's about 1,000 of them. So it would be a real big process, but I would give anyone the same amount of time that actually would want to sign up for these time slots. So I'm thinking that before our convention, the national convention, what I want to do is put this in front of as many people as would like to. If President Trump wants to show up, if JFK Jr. wants to show up, whoever it is that's running for president, even if Biden wants to show up for our process, we give them each 15 minutes. And one of my questions that I asked everyone, and I said 10 words or less. The answers on this should be not a politician's answer, but there's a definitive answer. There's not a nerfy answer here for some of these topics, and they should be able to answer those questions fairly quickly. So I think that's what we should do is perhaps do a format such as that, and then stitch them together, pre-record it, stitch each one of them together into one format, and let we the people actually see what people are thinking, what they're actually thinking, or whether they have a command of the subject matter or not.
So that would be very easy to do, especially with known candidates. Bearing in mind that to keep it open, I mean, there's a organization out there called Free and Fair Elections that I follow from time to time, and they do similar things. Mainly, it's parties, and a lot of it are fairly unknown parties, like the Prohibition Party and such. But they did a recent debate with candidates and they invite everybody as well: Republican, Democrat, Green, Libertarian, Constitution, Prohibition. I mean, you can go down the list. They invite everybody that they can. The people need to keep in mind that on Ballotpedia, if you go there, that there are over 1,000 presidential candidates listed and registered with the FEC currently. And yet the media only promotes Republicans and Democrats for the most part. Occasionally, when the Libertarians, like a few years back, when they got a decent amount of votes, that they included them on the debates as well. However, like you were saying, debates one at a time. And I hated calling what we did last weekend a debate for this reason.
Because it really wasn't.
Yeah, but debates are a lot of back and forth. That somebody answers a question and then somebody else can answer it and they can rebuttal each other's statements. And that's not what we're interested in. I'm not interested in a candidate attacking another candidate.
Absolutely.
I want to hear the actual answers from you. I don't care about what somebody else said. I want to hear it out of your mouth, what you're going to do, what your plans are, what your authority is. And then we can go from there. So we had more of an open forum on Saturday. And that can be found. I'll have that up on our website at ustpm.org here this week, probably tonight.
Well, it's on Brandenburg News Network right now because we recorded it and we edited it. So I believe It's on Brandenburg News Network right now, in fact.
And the reason why the people have to pay attention to such things is we all can agree, I believe, everybody here and everybody listening, we all can agree that the media is narrative control, right? There's only a handful of corporations that control the narrative that you see coming out of your TV. And even though the majority of Americans say that they don't believe what comes across the mainstream media, when you talk to them out on the streets or in day-to-day communication, what is it that we hear? It's the same nonsense being promoted by the mainstream media. In one way or another, it's a lot of people talking about the problems, or a lot of people talking against a candidate, right? That we need to get out of that mindset. We need to start focusing on individual candidates and looking at them for who they are and what they've done and what they're saying, instead of going against another candidate. I mean, we saw that happen in what year was that? Was it 2016? with McCain and Obama. No, that was Trump. I'm sorry. It must have been 2008 with McCain and Obama. The majority of people were talking about, the majority of Republicans are talking about how bad Obama is. The majority of Democrats are talking about how bad McCain is. And when it came down to elections, the majority of what I heard was that, well, we have to vote for McCain so that Obama doesn't get in office, or we have to vote for Obama so McCain doesn't get in office. Where is that in your American liberty? That's not it. All the while, there was almost 1,000 FEC registered candidates at that time, and the media only has us talking about 2. And the reason why is because the majority of the time they are both 2 wings of the same bird, right? They both promote the same ideas, and the media look at it this way. If you look at the old WWF or WWE, how is it that they drive attention to it? How is it that they fill the seats every time that there's a fight? That's because they promote the battle, right? They promote the discourse. There's always one attacking another, and the other's attacking this one, and they keep putting that in front of the people and keep re-engaging their attention in the matter, and they fill the seats and keep them focused on the 2 things. All the while it's staged and they already know the outcome. Roosevelt said it back in the 30s, I believe, that presidents are selected, not elected. This has been going on forever. So go ahead and play your video. I didn't mean to.
That's a wonderful parallel.
That needed to be said, because what you're pointing out is the human failing of focusing almost with morbid curiosity, wanting to see people punished for the things they've done. Well, we really don't want to see them punished for the things they've done right or that they've done wrong. We want to see them turn around and make good choices. That is the better option every single time. If you can work with somebody who you may not necessarily, and this is a real big problem I have with the Christian community out there, is they will not talk to people that they don't agree with, and then they start calling them names and such, but they don't reach out to them, and they don't see that okay, yeah, maybe this person is doing the wrong thing, but what's behind it? And are we being Jesus in this world? Are we being light, or are we just pushing them off to the side and not caring and not trying? Are we ostracizing, or are we actually being salt in the world? So people have gotten into this really bad habit, really, really bad habit. And this is so anti-Bible and it's anti-God, of sitting there and sniping at people in these chats and such, and calling them terrible names and lying just because they want to win at all costs. And they don't care if they destroy everyone along the way. Instead of going to them first and talking to them and seeing if they can resolve it. No. It's immediately attack and destroy. That's what's going on here. So when they focus in on wanting to see these debates and watching people like destroy each other, instead of why are we dumb enough to do this? It truly is a really, really stupid process, because it should be, well, say what you have to say, let your yes be yes, let your no be no, and move on and go talk to them if you disagree with it, because the light of God, the truth, will overcome any and all of this stuff. We don't have to devolve in that. Now, with that said, when we see somebody doing the absolute wrong thing, and this is where I keep going back to, you've got to have discernment. There are people that have thrown in with pure evil. Then there's no marrying of the two. However, of evil and good. However, if somebody's fallen down and not really kind of doing the right thing, you can go and talk to them, but you don't go after them personally and do what I've seen out there, somebody going after somebody's family, calling CPS on them, doing these terrible things just to win at all cost. There's a difference there. But let me play the beginning of this video and just take a look at what went on here on Saturday.
Okay, so candidates, will pay attention here. We'll go through you one at a time. And any questions from the room or from the rest on Zoom, please wait until the end here, and then we'll open it up and take them one at a time per candidate. Yep, 3-minute response times. Kyle's going to be our timekeeper here, so he's right next to the camera. I'm sure he'll find a way to let you guys know. So we'll start Joel Skousen right up there in the corner. Give us a little introduction. Give the people an introduction as to who you are, why you're running, and what are the qualifications of the office you're running for, please.
So thank you. It's good to be with you. My name is Joel Skousen. I'm the publisher and editor of the World Affairs Brief. I go back with the Constitution and U.S. Taxpayers Party since the beginning. In 1982, I was asked by Howard Phillips to come to Washington, D.C. to be the chairman of the Conservative National Committee to help stop the compromises that were going on during the Reagan administration.
Can you guys hear this?
And during that time period, I learned
it's playing.
all the workings of how to deal with Washington and the lobbyists and the various congressmen, and got to know some of the great patriots, including Richard Viguerie and Howard Phillips and others there in Washington. I am the nephew of W. Cleon Skousen, probably the most famous constitutional defender in the United States, who was chairman of the National Center for Constitutional Study and spoke nationwide. I am a conservative political scientist by training, and although I must say I was taught by leftists, and so I learned mostly to argue for the Constitution rather than be tutored by the leftist professors that dominate every university. My real purpose, I think, in winning or in running for the presidency is to help build the Constitution Party, which desperately, as you know, needs building. And so I am prepared and uniquely qualified, I think, to target the Republicans and other conservatives with my deep understanding of what's going on in Washington and particularly the deep state control over the leadership of the Republican Party as well as the Democrats. Republicans look to Donald Trump as a savior, but he's incapable of draining the swamp because he's never known the history of conspiracy of the deep state, and only in the history of conspiracy can you know the cover-ups the government has been involved in. And it's only through knowing who was involved in the cover-ups that you know who's deep state and who's not. And that's why Donald Trump couldn't find out that James Comey, Robert Mueller, and Christopher Wray, and even some of the Supreme Court justices he put on the bench have been deep state. And so that's my qualifications to run for office, that I'm able, I think, to be able to wake up Republicans to the fact that they won't find salvation within the Republican Party. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Skousen. I'm just going to go in order here on video as I can see them. So I believe next is Sam Tittle. Would you like to tell us about yourself and give us your qualifications and why you're running, please?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Donna Brandenburg for bringing this together with Mr. Bill Mohr. What a pleasure to see that you're together. Paul Venable, I'll acknowledge that you're here, and that's exciting. Mr. Joel Skousen, boy, am I going to be calling your telephone very shortly, sir, because you know what? You got a serious candidate here. Now, everybody wants to get in there in this Constitution Party that have applied to be president of the United States of America. But you better be paying attention, because I'm as serious as a heart attack that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Mr. Donald Trump are going to be going through, okay, as soon as I get out there. But this time, we're not going to play around with the Constitution Party and the Tax Party and all the rest of the parties that are out there, New Hampshire Party. We don't need a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You need a candidate out there right now that has run since 2012, 2016, 2020, and yes, there really was mass voter fraud, so I'm going to say it real quickly. If you want the candidate that's going to get in there, and I understood you, Joel, I heard you very well. Hello, Mr. Cummings. If you want the candidate that's going to put God first, the Constitution right behind it, we the people all together, get them back into governing their own houses, their own lives. If you're ready for the Second Amendment reinforcer, because we have some issues down there with the red flag law and bump stocks and the rest of it, they're moving the period around. If you're ready for somebody that's got the Surety Border Act that's coming in, because I was raised on that El Paso, Texas border, and I assure you that is going to be taken care of within 30 to 60 days when we get in there. And what I would like to do is become the candidate for the Constitution Party so that we can pick up no labels. We'll pick up the rest of the parties that are out there, and we'll convince them. You need one candidate that's going to go in there and do the Border Surety Act. And I'd love to tell you all about it, but ever since I started, and I know Donald Trump since 1988, he's used everything that I have. So officially, I'm giving you my notice that I will be the president of the United States of America, and I need some sharp top people like Bill Mohr, Miss Donna Brandenburg, the whole lot of you, and every single American citizen out there, because I told you back in Idaho that you had the enemy within. We're going to get the enemy out. With that said, I'm Sam Tittle, and I'm right here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it every time we get together as well. You're quite a character that's not normally around me. Most people around me are fairly quiet, so you bring that whole different light to a conversation. Next, Mr. Cummings, Daniel Cummings, if you would tell us who you are. And
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Carry on.
Okay.
3 minutes.
Before I started my 3 minutes, did you catch that the...
Can y'all hear me and see me?
No?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to stop there. They did a really good job past that, but that's kind of the format of how it is. And we had a little bit of technical difficulty at the beginning, but like we do every day here, real news for real people by real people. It's real, it's authentic, and you're going to see, regular Americans just trying to do the right thing.
And I guess kind of to your point earlier, some debates, there's some question as to whether people had prepared statements or how much of it was effectively scripted and how much of it was real. Watch through what happened Saturday if you have any question as to whether or not it was real. There were some very good off the cuff questions and answers there.
Yeah, that there was.
Yeah, there was not one question that we had was scripted.
Yeah, the candidates were not given the questions ahead of time, and some of the questions from the room were probably made people a little bit uncomfortable, but they were definitely, there were some very good answers to some of them.
Yeah, never invite John Tater to a fight of any kind, because he is prepared and ready. And because of course John wants to come up and he'll say, ask your question, and then you answer it, and he'll go, you're wrong. And then he'll explain, if you have time to listen to him, why it's not the constitutionally correct answer.
Yep. Yeah, he's pretty sharp when it comes to that.
He's very sharp.
I think that video, it looked like it was about an hour and a half, so it's not that terrible long. And there are a lot of sections in there that you can probably glaze over a little bit of talking points and such, especially when I get the mic. But nonetheless, it's fairly informative when it comes to those 6 candidates. And even Randall Terry, we got to apologize for anybody watching the video, because Randall was actually in the room. So when he speaks, he turns around, you just see his backside, because he was addressing us, not the other candidates. So it's very nice, and thank you, Ralph, for putting that up there. We'll get it up on the website short enough, and we hope to put on some more candidates. But to your point earlier, Donna, when you talk about people that would go out and attack other people, you're right on that. It is not our job to personally attack, but as Christians, as Christ followers, we are to reprove the works of darkness, right? We're supposed to shine light on them and making them known. That's not personally attacking, and we need to make sure we don't go that route. However, when things are being done, we need to not make light of it. We need to shine light on it so that it can be known. However, when you were talking about how we should go to that person, that's clearly laid out in Matthew 18, regards to the body of Christ and how we handle issues. We go to that person first in hopes to reprove them, in hopes that they repent from it and turn from it, and thus make the right choices following. And if they don't hear us, then we take a couple more. And if they don't hear them, then we take it to the whole body and we say, hey, this is what's going on. And if they still refuse to see it, then we're to do away with that. And then we can make the public example of what was just done, right? And we need to stick to that instead of taking something between two people and making it public, because that does nothing but harm the body. And it does nothing but make people look foolish in the eyes of the world, that we can't even get along with each other, let alone somebody that's not even within the body.
Now, with the exception I have to that, if somebody draws first blood in a public forum, then they're going to get their tails handed to them. There's no, if people want to talk and be civilized, that's fine. But if somebody comes into the situation with wrong intention and or intention to do harm, they just opened up their own demise there, because we will hand their tails to them. But
absolutely. If you want to make a fool of yourself in public, then everybody should jump on there and gladly reprove that action, right?
Right. If
what's done in public is not private.
If they're doing something that is subversive, as an example of provoking someone, such as Warren Carpenter was provoked, or was not provoked. He was attacked, and basically it was sort of a subversive attack when Chuck Richard said, this guy said the F word and somebody should call, he's not a fit parent, somebody should call CPS or something to that thing. I mean, he drew first blood right there. When you attack somebody's family, I would expect Warren and anybody around him to absolutely call him out and stop that discussion immediately as a violation of the right of a parent to. We don't have to agree with what parents do. I quite often disagree with what I see, when I look at somebody else raising kids, but mine are all raised, right? But it's not your business. They are the business is between God. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday about how many people want to put themselves in playing God in other people's lives. It's a real problem. If you step in front of that relationship, because we don't know what God's trying to achieve, and God uses all things, good and bad, in order, for good. He's all things work together for good to those who love the Lord. Well, that means that even things that maybe seem to us to be non-ideal, he will take those and he will use them as manure in a garden to grow something large. Now, I don't know about you, but the biggest mistakes I've made in my life were the best teachers to me. And I don't think we should shirk away from them or feel bad about the mistakes we've made in life, because we were there. We've talked about these things. It was just like having Stanley, I'm going to get his name wrong right now, Lazinski on here last week, and he had some substance abuse problems. Well, he got himself super motivated, and God literally touched his heart. And Stanley has an amazing story of how he was homeless. He was really down and out, living on the streets and such. God literally visited him, and I do believe that he did absolutely had an angel of the Lord visit him. He talks about it, and it brings him to tears. It's a great story. Turned his entire life around. He goes to the gym. He works up. He was up to about 370 pounds. On top of it, just sat by himself and looked out the window, loathing himself in the world. God literally visited him. And he says he saw it with his own eyes. He saw an angel with his own eyes. And I have to believe that he's telling the truth, because he totally turned his life around. And now he's got American Substance Abuse Foundation, and he's helping people with great compassion because he was there. He knew it. You cannot help people in the same way as somebody who went through the same trauma. Ask any military veteran who's been in combat. we can talk to them. I've never been in the military. I wish I had been at this stage of my life, but 60 years old is a little too late to be, putting on a 60-pound pack and running up a hill, with the troops. Ain't going to happen, right? But it's not realistic. But somebody who's gone through that can speak to each other and truly help them with the same experience. How did you get through this? In ways that we could never even come close to being able to claim that we know, because we don't know it. But somebody who goes through something like that, like substance abuse, they can talk to somebody. They know what it's like. And I think that one of the greatest things is those of us who've been out here during this time, when this thing is all made right, and it's going to be, we have all the evidence on every level, and it's just going to be a matter of time. Just wait, sit back. But it's not our position or our time to tell or dictate when this happens. This is God's plan. And he's got some details I'm pretty sure he's working on right now. And when he's ready, it's going to be the perfect timing.
Well, that, and, people like that, we know, and I've known several. Right, but God has this way of pulling somebody out of the mire, right?
Yeah,
Out of the
Lazuski,
pits
that's
of
his
the
last
earth.
name. It took me a minute. Stanley Lazuski,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he pulls them out of the pits of the earth, cleans them up, washes them up, gives them new clothes, and sends them out as his ambassadors, right? But he doesn't typically send them out just to some random group or random area. The majority of the time you see somebody who has repented and truly turned, he'll take them and he'll send them right back into the same area he just got them out of.
Yep.
Try to pull more out, right? That was the calling for the disciples, the apostles at the first front. They were supposed to go to Judea and Samaria, right? Their own towns, their own area first, because those are the people that knew them. They knew how they were, and they knew how they are now. And then after that, they were called to go to the othermost parts of the earth, right? It's the same with us. We're to reach out to those around us close first, and
Our
then
lives
go out.
are our testimony. When you are truly saved and you're truly trying to do the right thing before God and leaning on him for strength and everything, the testimony is people seeing God work through our lives to do amazing things that we could never have done in our own strength. And that brings another point up when you were talking about people being really being put right back into where they came from. The prodigal son is a perfect example of this. The older son did everything perfect, right? And I see that as the modern day church. They do things that they think are perfect. They're in a piety contest. And then he was going to try to hold his dad to a contract. I've done everything right, and why do you welcome him back in? He's done everything wrong, carousing with women and drinking and all this sort of thing. And the father said, you're my beloved son. You did everything right. You inherit everything. But think about the testimony and the go that second son, who had done a lot of wrong things, he came back not because of a contract, because God will honor the contract, but he came back because he loved his dad and he saw the difference. And his service from then on out was truly in love with his father, with the true relationship, where the other son was a little narcissistic. He hung it on his righteousness and holding his dad to a contract. The second son came back and he knew what his father was trying to teach him. And he came back with tremendous respect and love. And when I read that, I see disrespect from the first son, really, but God will honor the contract. But the real relationship came in with the second son, with him coming back in true repentance and love for his father. And he knew that material things didn't matter. He was there because of the right reason.
A lot of the strongest Christians I know came from a fairly messed up background. And they, the ones that were in the most trouble a lot of times end up being some of the strongest Christians when they manage to turn things around. And I think another thing too to kind of keep in mind is that when we talk about freedom and liberty, you got to remember that those are that's not just the freedom and liberty to make good choices. That's the freedom and liberty for people to make bad choices in their lives too. And some of that, it's their choice, and they're going to have to figure it out from there, but trying to control that and make sure that they stay on exactly the rails that we want them to is it's not true freedom or liberty. I mean, we have been given the gift of free will, but there is definitely some responsibility to that. But we do have, just like God has given us the ability to make poor choices, that is kind of a key component of freedom and liberty.
Yeah, liberty is described as the freedom to do what the law permits, right? Nowhere in the scriptures do we find where we have the liberty to go out and violate law. However, you can choose to. I mean, absolutely, you can go out there and do whatsoever you would like, but you're going to reap the consequences of it, right? Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And we can see that being played out in our day-to-day lives if you look around. I mean, I have perfect examples of that in very, very recent history, where people wouldn't heed warnings and they continued in their path of sin, all the while calling themselves a Christian, yet completely disregarding the law of God. And as Paul says, the law is perfect, converting the soul. Right? That is the standard. That is what we are to hold to as individuals, as families, as the state, as the nation. That is the standard that we are to uphold. As soon as we lessen the law, I forget who said it, but he said that they dim the mirror by which man sees himself. Right? Which basically means that the lower the standard is, the more righteous everybody appears to be. And you can see that clear as day throughout history, and even modern. I mean, we're talking about candidates, and yeah, if you were to just throw out the standard of what a candidate should be, we talked about that in Exodus 18:21. You throw out the standard of what we're called to look for in candidates, and you lessen that, then all the candidates come more on an equal playing field, right? It's this whole equity thing that's being promoted in numerous government organizations, is that, just one person that they worked harder throughout their lives, right? We all start equal. We are all equal. However, it is only by merit that a man can advance, by merit and action. So when one person works harder and gains a little bit ahead in life, there are numerous organizations out there that believe you ought to take from that person and give to the other so that they get back on an equal level playing field. And that's not the way life works, right? That's this whole, I know,
wealth.
Yeah, I know you've said it, Donna. When your kids come up to you and say, it's not fair, what's the first thing that you say?
Life's not fair. Get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the absolute truth. If you want it, you work for it, right? And it's the same thing that we were just talking about with candidates. We want change. We desire the change, not change, restoration. We want the restoration that we so desire, that America craves, right? And we mentioned on a previous show where a study was done back in 21 through the Gallup poll, that 67% of Americans want a third party. Yet, where are the 67% of Americans that want the third party, right? Another party.
Perfect example I had this weekend as I talked to somebody that I ran into somebody at the store, and I'm like, oh, I saw you. We realized that she'd come to the meeting over at Center Shot. And she's like, yeah, she said, I haven't really jumped on to do anything yet. It's really hard to leave the Republican Party. And I said, why is this so hard? I don't understand this. They've been doing nothing, nada, squat. this is about is bad of an argument. And I pretty much said it this way, you know me, I'm going to say whatever comes to my mind. And I'm like, they've done nothing. I said, this is like voting Biden in. He was in office for 50 years, and anybody thinks it's going to change. He's part of the problem. So what's so hard to move to a different option than to continue to bang your head in the stupid brick wall the same way every time? I don't understand it. And, it's just crazy. Sorry.
Well, you can bring something up to her, something that I just recently read. Let's see, it's not in that book. I'm sorry. I'm not a book reader, but I will tell you, my office is my desk. I have like no more room. It's all full of books right now.
So you're a scanner.
I am very much a scanner. Yes, I can go find things that I'm looking for, but I have a hard time sitting down and reading through an entire book.
Well, sometimes it takes 1,000 words to say the two that are important, and that's really unfortunate, but that doesn't sell books.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Take 10 pages describing the beauty of a mountain.
Yeah, like Tolstoy.
Tolstoy? I don't think I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, there's several authors out there.
Tolkien
certainly does it. It's like I read all of the Tolkien books to my kids when they were younger, because I started out reading, and I would read when my kids were younger, because I don't sleep much, and I'm kind of a spaz, right? So like I'm constantly doing something, and so I read the Tolkien books to my kids when they were very young. I also read Chronicles of Narnia, the works of C.S. Lewis and that sort of thing when they were younger. And I would insert words that I knew they didn't know. You have a 4-year-old or something that he doesn't maybe understand the complex words. So I would read along, and then I would say that word, and then I'd give them a similar word, a synonym, or an explanation of what that word was as we were reading. And I thought I was going to die going through the Tolkien books, because I'm one of these people that reads for information. And I'm like, how long does it take to describe a mountain? And I counted at one place, one explanation of a mountain was multiple pages. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I could not do this again. This is like way, way too much. But I did it. I made it through. So.
Yep. So regarding this lady you were talking to about not leaving the Republican Party, a lot of people that I've spoken to say, they need to restore the Republican Party to back to where it was, right? And I'm not sure how far back they have to go to get there. I see back in the 1860s where the Republican Party on its debut, so to speak, was violating the Constitution on its first set of candidates, right? There was no standard that was given. Then we can go into that later, but just in recent history, we're all familiar in 1973 during the Roe versus Wade, right? The unconstitutional ruling by the Supreme Court. They had no authority to even talk about the matter. They could give an opinion, but that's it. They couldn't rule on this, right? But the American people accepted it and allowed the sanction of 70 plus million children in the womb, right? They declared war on people that couldn't even defend themselves. Let's put it that way. So in 73,
largest genocide on this planet has been for our brothers and sisters, our children that were unborn.
Absolutely. It was war on the American posterity is exactly what it was.
And unfortunately, I think people are not aware enough to understand what's really happening there with them selling fetal parts, as well as the Church of Satan saying this is part of their ritual. They have, that's why they're saying that it's their religious right to sacrifice, and they have included abortion in their terminology, or in their little assault on the unborn, as a right, a religious right, because they talk about it as abortion is their right to sacrifice, and they do sacrificial abortions, and they admit to this. So I don't really understand how people can turn a blind eye to things that are coming out of their own mouths. They're damned by their own admission.
Yeah. Well, it's what comes out of a man that defiles him, right? Not what goes in. Words will defile an individual. It's clear condemnation. They condemn themselves under the law. But going back to the point regarding Republicans, let's look back in 73, all right, the 9 Supreme Court justices that sat on the bench at that time. Let's look who they were supported by, right? So you had 2 people in opposition in 1973, and that was Byron White, who was appointed by John F. Kennedy, right? Democrat John F. Kennedy, and you had William Rehnquist, who was placed there by Richard Nixon, right? Who was the Chief Justice at the time, Republican. Those were the only 2 who, and I didn't read their opinions, but just by sheer vote, those are the only 2 that upheld what they were supposed to. They upheld their oath. Those in favor that voted in favor of Roe at the time, Henry Blackmun, who was appointed by Nixon, the Republican. You have Warren Burger, who was appointed by Nixon, a Republican. You have William Brennan Jr., who was appointed by Eisenhower, a Republican. You have Potter Stewart, who was appointed by Eisenhower, a Republican. And you have Lewis Powell Jr., who was appointed by Nixon, a Republican. There were only 2, William Douglas and Thurgood Marshall, who were appointed by Roosevelt and Johnson as Democrats. The majority of the Supreme Court at that time was appointed by your Republican Party. Right? Looking at it that way. What foundation, what morals are we trying to get back to? Or are they trying to get back to in the Republican Party? I can tell you I've never been part of the Republican Party. All right. Never once have I done that my entire life. Maybe I was just raised different, but I've never supported parties. And even in the U.S. Taxpayers Party, I'll help build a party as an avenue for candidates, right? An avenue for people to get their voice heard. But I'm not supporting a sole party. I'm supporting individuals. That is my goal, even as chairman, right? And I will support our candidates as much as possible. But when I see them getting off track as well, I'll hold them to account. I did that just recently with one of our candidates.
I feel the same way. I will vote for the candidate that I feel will do the best job to manage our asset and to uphold the Constitution and defend the rights that God gave everyone. The rights come from God. That's what I'm looking for right there.
Yeah. This is election season, which is why we continue on this topic. But I have numerous times not voted for a Constitution Party candidate because I knew that what they were swearing to in their oath, they did not believe. Judging by just their actions alone and what they supported in their day-to-day lives, they had no business being a candidate under the Constitution Party platform. They just didn't. So I'll pass that up. And there are times where I won't vote for anybody because I can't judge their character in the matter because I don't know them. A lot of times, federal offices, I leave a lot of that blank because I just don't know these people, and I'm not going to stand before my God when he asks me or when he brings up the fact that I voted for somebody against my conscience. I don't want to stand there and have to give an account for that.
Right? Because that conscience part of it is where God's talking to us. And so if you're listening to man or you're listening to God, there's a dividing line right there. If God's telling you to do something and you want to walk with God and it takes practice. You do it and, try listening every single day, a little bit more. And all of a sudden he'll be telling you exactly what you need to do. And it's quick. And if you step outside of that, you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he wants you redirected again, which is kind of a cool process. But you're absolutely right. If God tells you to do something, you've got to do it no matter what anybody else says or thinks. He'll tell you through your conscience and such what to do.
Yep. I forgot where I was going to just go there.
Sorry.
Oh, so in regards to that, I hear tons of people still today, and it amazes me, but tons of people still today, professed Christians, going out there and saying, well, we can't get involved in politics, all right? We can't get involved with civil
how many
government.
times do you hear that? I don't get involved in politics. It's like I want to look at them and say, you already are involved in it. You're paying the salary of these people. So you can't tell me you're not involved in politics. You are. You're just turning a blind eye to their theft and letting them beat the crap out of you.
Yeah. And I've set up events in the past where I go around to advertise, right? And I mean, I'm not going to hide religion out of politics. I just won't do it. That's not what we're called to. And if we're going to, then we're denying the faith in that matter. But a lot of times when I try to advertise for things one-on-one with people or businesses, I get the, well, you can't bring religion into politics. There's a separation of church and state, right? And I was going to hit this point for a solid hour today, but I'll just cap over the top of it.
Sorry, let's just keep going.
No, that's great, because most people don't understand where that comes from. And this is an essential part of liberty. Understand that, because John Adams said our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It was wholly inadequate for the government of any other. Okay, so we need to understand that first and foremost, that religion and morality plays a part in our politics, right? And even Michigan Constitution, religion, morality, and knowledge is necessary for good governance. Okay. So when I hear people say, well, we can't do that because we have the separation of church and state, I always love to ask them, where did you find that? Where did you read that? Not one person has ever been able to show me. Okay. They are just quoting stuff, once again, that comes down from the mainstream media, from Southern Poverty Law Center, from the ACLU, from all these other government organizations that are funded by the taxpayers, right? They're just continually propagating all this narrative that they're laying out for them without even understanding where it came from. So let's crush that. Let's just cut that tree down right now. The separation of church and state clause has been used in over 4,000 Supreme Court cases. Okay, over just the past 120 years or so. Okay, you go back farther, the First Amendment in the entire history of America has only been used in over 3,000. They've been using the separation of church and state for so long, people believe it to be part of our founding document. And you can only find it in a letter that Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptists, right? And this was in 1802, where the Danbury Baptists sent a letter to President Jefferson explaining their fear that the government would be able to regulate into their churches. Okay, and Jefferson specifically said that the people, the whole American people, declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. We know that in the First Amendment, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Adhering to this expression of the supreme will of the nation in behalf of the rights of the conscience, I, as Jefferson, as president, shall see with sincere satisfaction the progress of those sentiments which tend to restore to man all his natural rights, because without it you have none, convinced he has no natural right in opposition to his what? Social duties. We are, as Christians, those professing out there that continually say that we can't bring religion into politics, that is what we should be doing. There was a quote by, let's see if I can pull this up, a quote by Charles Spurgeon that I just saw a little bit ago, and I jumped over that somehow. But let me pull this back up a minute. Because the Christian duties, like we talked about earlier, was to reprove, rebuke, and exhort, right? That's within the body of Christ. And that we're to shine light on the works of darkness. We are to expose them for what they truly are. I'm looking at the wrong one here.
Tom Always Learning says that the separation of church and state from Tom from the chat, the separation of church and state is meant to protect the church, not to protect the state.
Exactly. The church has no business getting in the state has no business getting in the affairs of the church. However, Remember, this country was founded on a moral and religious people, religion being described in the 1828 Webster's Dictionary as the worship of God. And all of our state constitutions, all 50 of them, you can see that clear as day. Every one of them has a reference to God, and some of them have just innumerable references. You get over there on the East Coast, some of the original state constitutions, they reference the supreme creator, supreme being, the ultimate judge, almighty God. I mean, it goes over and over and over. I think we did a show on that too. I know I wrote an article on that last year. Oh, I can't find that quote. I should have saved it. I'm horrible at saving things, everybody that knows me. I'll see something and I can remember it right up until I want it. And then since I didn't save it, I won't be able to go back to it. But all goes back to the quote by Samuel Adams, where he said, "How strangely will the tools of a tyrant pervert the plain meaning of words," right? And those words have been perverted, the separation of church and state. And the Supreme Court has ruled those over and over and over in various cases. And I actually have a book here, another one of these books on my desk, written by David.
For the pertinent facts.
Yeah, written by David Barton, that goes in and explains, probably close to 200 court cases in just a very short amount of time in recent history, where they have used the separation clause unconstitutionally to attack the people of America. And a lot of these, I'll tell you, a lot of these are against children. Understand that. Like just a couple in St. Louis, Missouri, and I don't have the dates here, but this is all between the 70s, right, late 60s, early 70s to about 2021. So I'm sure there's been hundreds added since then. But one school official caught an elementary student praying over his lunch in Missouri. He ordered the student out of his seat, reprimanded him in front of the other students, and took him to the principal, who ordered him to stop praying. Right? This is just in the schools. New York, a 5-year-old kindergarten student was forbidden to say a prayer over her lunch and was scolded by a teacher for doing so. In Texas, right, the Big Sky State, school officials took the property of, right, violation of the Fourth Amendment. They took the property, they confiscated the personal Bibles of 2 students and threatened to have the students picked up by CPS. They also confiscated from the students their personal 10 Commandment book covers. In California, which this one doesn't surprise me, but nonetheless, this is public indoctrination happening on. Teachers are not allowed to display historical phrases. Why? Because all of our founding fathers referenced the God of Israel, Isaac and Jacob. They referenced the scriptures and all of this. They were not allowed to display historical phrases that contain religious words, such as the Declaration of Independence or the national motto, right? In Maine, of all places, a 3rd grader wore a t-shirt containing the words Jesus Christ. And he was required to turn the shirt inside out so the words could not be seen, right? Tennessee, high school students were required to write a paper on any topic and at least use 4 research sources. We've all done this. I hated it, in all honesty. I wish I would have paid more attention now, because now I do it on a regular basis. Some students wrote about reincarnation, witchcraft, the occult, right? Just as reference points. But the student who chose to write about the life of Jesus Christ was given a 0. Fail. Using historical documents, okay? A lot of schools have banned students from inviting their friends to meetings if the meetings are religious. You can share literature throughout all the schools, any literature you want, unless it's religious. You can wear any clothing you want in schools, for the most part. There's still a few that are that have to remain within some modest terms, and I'm glad of that, because we get into a couple more generations here, and what you see outside, you're going to see inside the schools. But you can wear any clothing of your choice unless it has a Christian message. You can pass out Valentines unless the Valentines have a Christian message, right? You can wear any costumes you want at Halloween. You can support the dead. You can support witchcraft. any amount of occultic practices at Halloween in schools, except if one of those is depicting a personal religious figure. Right? So Congress, we go back to the First Amendment here. This is how it's being construed. Nowadays, Congress could mean a student or a citizen, teacher, soldier, school, community, etc. When they say make no law, that apparently now means cannot express one's faith in a public arena. Or when they use the word establish, nowadays that means allow, right? So they cannot allow religion. The establishment of religion now would mean to express one's formally constitutionally protected free exercise of religion in an official public forum or arena. You can see, as we allow the perversion of plain meanings of words, this is what we continue to get. And as long as we keep paying attention to the mainstream media narrative that is now all the way propagated down into our schools and being taught to our children by our sworn enemies, okay? As long as we allow that, we're going to keep promoting the narrative by talking about it, by reiterating that which we see across the mainstream media. It creates confusion. And if we call ourselves Christians, we have to understand that our God is not the God of confusion. Any confusion that you may have, you better go to the scriptures and get it straightened out, because any other confusion means that you've been indoctrinated with something else other than the truth, or you could just not be quite understanding it yet. But the answers are for us. All we have to do is get in it and understand it. All the answers to life are laid out right in those 66 books, and you can include some others if you want. You can go back to historical documents, reread how history happens, because it's a cycle. And we're to that point now again where, as Ronald Reagan had said, when freedom is not handed on to the next generation, right? We don't gift freedom to our posterity, but we have to give it to them to be fought and protected for them to hand down to do the same. Each generation has to fight for our freedoms and our liberties. So if we don't understand what liberty is, and we don't understand what rights we have that are not granted by government, but are given to us by God, then we don't have any to fight for. So we need to get back to that principle and understand what our founding fathers understood at that time. And we need to, as an American people, we need to repent. We need to turn away from the sins that this nation has committed and straighten it out, right? The world that we see it is the church's report card. How are we doing? What grade are we getting as a church, as a body of Christ?
Wow, that was really well said. Really well said. The problems that we have in government are the fault of we the people, because we didn't step up soon enough. The failings in the world around us, as quite often because we're too interested in our own pursuits rather than being sensitive to the people around us and serving this world. I'm of the opinion that this world is not about our comfort or getting this, that, and the other thing. We're here to work and learn to work and work with honor and integrity to benefit the world that God created. It's his world. And if we spend so much time playing, play because it's our right, instead of doing the right thing and being here on a mission, and I mean truly on a mission to be as helpful, reduce suffering, to help people see in a very tangible way, what would Jesus do in any situation? What would he do? Well, I'm pretty extra sure that there was a lot of things he didn't do, because he was on a mission, and he was clear on what his mission was, and he didn't appear to be too distracted from that mission either. Yep. And I think that's what we're supposed to be doing also. So to your point, if we were on that mission instead of the mission of self, pretty extra sure that all of these problems would go away, and put time into the wisdom of those that came before us, who walked through times that are pretty similar to the times we live in right now. I think that if you make it a comparison, when Noah started building the ark, for all of those people out there that have been stepping up and saying something to the people around them, talking about the world and what's gone on, and how many people have had their families laugh at them or ostracize them, or they're losing friends for them and such. Well, I'm pretty sure everybody was laughing at Noah until it started to rain. And then all of a sudden the panic set in, and he wasn't such a dumb guy anymore because he was listening to God's direction and not man's, even in the face of people making fun of him. So, do you have anything to say, Ralph?
Good wisdom today.
Yeah, Todd, our next guest is backstage. So this is great wisdom from both of you gentlemen today, and I appreciate that.
And I think too, from to Bill's point of the perverting of language, there are several people around that I can think of that have collections of old books and particularly dictionaries to make sure that there is a record of the language of the past, and that you can see the changes in language that have been forced upon us over time.
Modern day Christianity does not take into the account that they're reading books from a different culture with the words, and that's why it's important to go and check words out even in the Bible, because it's not that the words are necessarily wrong, it's that we don't understand them, and we don't really understand what actually was said at the time because of the disparity in language between books that were written 2,000 years ago. So and before. So we really need to be careful on changing those definitions and know what we're talking about.
And I mean, look at the warnings against that with Newspeak in 1984. Where you couldn't, they changed the language to the point where you could not express certain types of thoughts because they had changed the language so much.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks for being on today. It was a wonderful, absolutely wonderful, phone's going off here. Wonderful day, and thank you for your wisdom. I really appreciate all the hard work that both of you guys put into bringing the truth forward and knowing the subject matter and being able to speak well about them. It's really, really an honor to stand side by side with you guys.
You as well.
Thank you.
Same here, Donna.
Any ending words here, Bill?
Oh, not beyond what I had already said, but we need to get back to the way we used to do things if we want the results that we used to get doing them, right?
Mm-hmm. Tom put in another comment here. So did Charlotte. Billions of Ukraine are involved. Tax money is going up in smoke. NGOs getting wrongfully tax dollars to support their climate change and cult. LGBTQ groups, PSYOP people need to wake up. I think most of the people that we see out there with the LGBT groups I think they're funded. I don't think that this is the grassroots by any means of those communities, and they just want to be left alone. But of course we can use that and fund things to further the craziness out on the street. And Tom said more 40-year-old men are playing video games for hours each day than ever before.
Oh, yeah, video games. That's I can talk about that because I was a gamer, right? Since the time of Atari, right?
You can't go off on Pong, okay? Pong was a fun game.
Yeah, I have it. I have the original yet.
I was there when it first came out, and we were like, "Oh, this is cool." I was a little kid.
Since then, all the way up to 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years now, I played video games, not constantly, but I would, and I would use that as a form of entertainment, right? As a mind release, just to get out there and maybe play something that I wouldn't normally do in real life. However, 2.5 years ago, as I realized that my children were growing up watching this, and I started getting them into other games, real friendly team building games and such like that. But that became an idol in our house. Because that was the main focus in the evenings right after dinner. That was, well, let's sit down and have a family game night, right? We'd get on video games and such and play together. But it began taking up so much time, and that was everything that everybody looked for. At the end of the day, they wanted to look to play games, nothing more, nothing less. So 2.5 years ago, I packed them up, and
Well,
they've
we
been
should
in
talk about
boxes
this.
since then.
I don't want to be rude, but we should talk about this further. But I want to bring Todd on now because he's been sitting there.
Oh,
But let's
yes.
talk about video games next week, because I think we should go into this, because I think that there's more biblical precedence for this. But thank you for being on today, guys, and another great show. And we'll see you next week on Liberty Essentials.
Have a good week.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye. Bye, guys. Morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. This is the second hour. It is, I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is April 10th, 2024, and I'm going to bring my next guest right on. Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Good, Donna. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being so patient. We kind of got on a roll there and kind of felt like it was an important subject to stay on for just a little while till we finished it up, but thank you for being patient.
No problem.
What's happening with Todd World today? What are we talking about? United Sovereign Citizens?
Americans, actually. USA for short. United Sovereign Americans is a group founded by Marley Hornick of Citizens Audit New York and Harry Howery, who helped advise on writing HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, election and cybersecurity expert. And they have launched a national campaign to help save our elections, even in 2024. So I'm a volunteer, not a paid spokesperson for USA, but through Steve Stern, he organized, he's a guy in Florida, and he organized these nationwide election security. We're calling it election and security, not integrity now, because elections aren't human. They can't have integrity, really. So he organized these election security calls nationwide. I heard from pretty much every group out there working to try and secure our elections. And when I heard Marley Hornick speak, I felt like he had the best strategy. It made the most sense. I felt it was the most solid and had the best chance of impacting our elections. So we encouraged her to take it nationwide, and she did. And now we have chapters, or at least people, in 24 states representing over 370 electoral votes, working on writing their elections in their states. So it's pretty exciting. I can share with you the Florida scorecard, which analyzes our registration rolls, our voter registration rolls, and a few other things regarding the 22 Florida election. We're doing that for every state we have a chapter in, and I can go over.
Do you have one in Michigan?
We do.
We do. Okay, I need to get connected with the people here. So can you share your screen so we can see it?
Yes. I have a couple other things I'll share first, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Whatever. This is your segment. So whatever you want to speak about, this is all about making sure you have a place to be able to speak up and have people hear what you have to say.
Great. Let me first start. Last week, so it's very recent, Harry Howery testified in the disbarment trial of Jeffrey Clark. So because Jeffrey spoke up against, our stolen elections, they went after him and they disbarred him. So this was regarding how heavy a punishment to give someone who was simply speaking up about stolen elections. So, apparently freedom of speech is no longer in the United States under the Biden regime. But let me share this screen. I won't, belabor this, but just to hear a little bit of Harry. He's a brilliant guy and knows so much about elections. So
Let's see if I can.
I'm not saying that a valid election or a non-valid election determines that Joe Biden won or Donald Trump won the election. What it means is that the election wasn't conducted according to the law. The curing process and the investigation has to determine whether or not there's a material concern associated with the size of the breach. Everybody's encountered this when AT&T or MasterCard is hacked and they send out their notes that there's been a breach, but they don't know if anything's been done. This is a notification of a total breach. And then they expect you to report that if there's something wrong, and then they want you to get into a special, credit score monitoring system to make sure that you're not being attacked. They don't know. And so this issue of not knowing is the problem. So when you have an invalid operational security adherence, you have an invalid process. And what has to happen in a normal mitigation and control perspective is somebody has to investigate whether or not it had a material effect. But to the degree that we've looked at it, and to the degree that many others have looked at it, we haven't seen any kind of sensible end-to-end security framework analysis of the things that have happened. And in Georgia and many other places, there were significant breaches. And what I mean by a breach in this sense is that things were let into the system that were not allowed under the law. The determination of what is allowed is up to the states generally. Sometimes it's up to the federal government, but most of it, the policies, procedures, process, controls are all state law for the most part. And so what it means though is when 160,000 ballots that are legally required to have signature verification run on them, but they're counted anyway, it means that the operational security boundary of the election has been violated. And you now have 160,000 votes into the system that weren't supposed to be there. And because of the inability to cure that ex post facto, there's no cure possible. You don't know what happened. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this in terms of the attempts to overthrow the election or change the election or outcome. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about whether or not the election was valid. It was not valid by cybersecurity standards. Simply not valid.
And that's just one consideration to be made too. That was well said by Harry, because it's not about which sports team wins here. Go team, go. This is about, did we uphold the law, and did we, the people, actually have the opportunity to have our candidates that we believe individually are the best to fulfill that position, and it didn't happen.
Correct, Donna. And you had Harry on last time I was on. A brilliant guy, and he has helped advise the strategy for USA along with a team of attorneys. And they're going after black letter election law violations that clearly made our elections invalid. Therefore, the certification that was given to those elections was illegal. It's my understanding that those people can be held personally responsible for illegally certifying those elections. And so part of the process, we initially develop a scorecard for the state showing those election law violations. We create a resolution based on that, and we ask people to sign it, elected officials to sign that they are behind conducting a valid and legally valid and lawful 2024 election. And if the elected officials will not correct the errors, then we will be filing litigation against the states for that. So, I could share another little thing about a Who We Are document for USA if you'd like.
Yes, please. I'd like to see that scorecard for Florida.
We'll get to that too.
And I'd like to see one for Michigan if you have one. That would be awesome.
Not yet, but it's being worked on.
Okay.
So let's see if I can find this. Here we go. So this is a little bit about United Sovereign Americans. We have chapters, or at least representatives, in 24 states, covering 387 electoral votes. Over 10,000 educational hours have been invested in our online federal election law discussion and training. In our litigation process, which I mentioned, it was launched in Maryland within the last month, bringing self-evident facts from official data into federal court, seeking an injunction against the use of provably broken voting systems for the 2024 election. And we intend to file in at least 23 more states and eventually seek a Supreme Court ruling before the 2024 election. So here's a list of the states on the right, and you can see Michigan is listed there, as well as Florida. We have people in Georgia and many other states you can see. So I know the Texas scorecard has been completed, Ohio's, Illinois, ours, and several others. So you can go to Unite for Freedom, online. The website is unite4freedom.com and learn more. And I highly suggest people go there, and they can also help, donate to the cause and the legal expenses.
Okay, here we go. I just put it up here. Let me go ahead and.
Yeah, unite4freedom.com.
We've got, let's see if I can, the donate page came up. Hang on a minute. There we go. Put it up there so people can see where to go to find the information. I think this is as important of a process to go through to understand where you need to go to find things.
Yeah. Well, and just some other talking points I'll run through quickly. Our stance is that the government is by consent of the governed. Voting rights are nonpartisan. Election validity is required by law. The error rate of votes counted should never exceed legally defined accuracy requirements. If voter rolls are inaccurate, which pretty much every state has inaccurate and bloated voter rolls, the result of the election should not be certified. It cannot be trusted. You don't know if real people are even voting. Many dead voters are voting, right? Now we have illegals flooding the border that are being given the power to vote, apparently. Voter roll accuracy is the duty of election officials, not citizens. They are paid to do this. It is their responsibility. Negligence or neglect, and it does not give them a free pass on elections not being conducted appropriately. And U.S. scorecard findings reflect a definition of election fraud. So we'll get into the Florida scorecard next. Litigation and legal efforts are focused on upholding guaranteed civil rights. So this is based on civil rights law, which there should be no standing issues with, because it's civil right granted to every lawful voter and citizen. And to save our country, we intend to file the same question in multiple federal circuits and force the matter to the Supreme Court. And that is our goal. So let me get back, and I can stop sharing that and go on to our scorecard.
Awesome. This is just really awesome. I love all the work that you are doing and everybody who stands with you and is working together. It's like Jeff Bongiorno down there. He's doing some great work, and what a great group of people that are working behind the scenes to find out everything that's wrong and bring it forward. And I know all you guys down there are just really working with, guys is a Michigan term, by the way, just so you know, everybody's guy from Michigan. So yeah, so we've got this whole language thing up here. That's our own little language in the state. If you study it enough, you'll see it. But all you guys that are working on this is just amazing. totally amazing, tireless, selfless work.
Well, yeah, with everything on the line, it's surprising the number of people that don't do anything. It's aggravating from that standpoint, and they still listen to the mainstream, narrative, which is completely that is misinformation for sure.
Fake news.
Yes, the
absolutely fake news liars that are putting stuff up that are absolutely flat out lies, and they know it.
And I get it. I mean, I used to listen to the mainstream media before 2020, and a lot of people are busy. They don't have time to do anything else. But you know what? Our lives and our freedom are really on the line at this point, and people need to wake up and start seeking out real news sources. And with social media and a lot of the apps that are out there, I reference Telegram a lot. There are a lot of good channels there. And
Brandenburg News Network.
Yes, and Brandenburg. Yes, exactly. Shows like this.
All the citizen stuff is just amazing that's going on right now, and we are the news, the true news, and they're the propaganda.
Yeah, when 8 corporations own 90% of the media outlets, and they have representatives from the CFR and the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderbergs on every single one of their executive committees, and those are the people that are working to control us through the WEF and you name it. But anyway, I'm getting off topic from USA's mission, so I'll get back to that now with scorecard. So here we have the Florida 2022 general election validity scorecard.
Oh, this is cool.
This first category analyzed the voter rolls and looked at all of the instances where a registrant appears to be invalid for various reasons. We found over 270,000 invalid addresses, which were, some were invalid, some were incomplete. We looked at, people that didn't have a valid mailing address, people that were registered at inappropriate locations. And this doesn't even include all of the people that are allowed to register at churches, at outreach centers, at homeless shelters. There's a law in Florida that lets people pretty much register to vote anywhere and everywhere, which is ridiculous. You don't know if they're a real resident or not, and this number excludes those. So we still found 270,000 suspect voters. There are 3,000 registered at a marina that has 50 full-time boat slips, things like that. Yeah. So the next line, there were 10 to 15 people registered at a single family home.
What?
Yes. And we personally digitally canvassed every single address and looked to make sure it was a single family home. A lot of these were tiny houses that had, maybe 2 bedrooms. And yet we found 11,800 voters registered there at those addresses. Yeah. And we stopped at 15 because the hit rate started going down and we just ran out of time. So there are likely more, above 15 per household.
Well, I was told that we've got one here in Michigan, or several of them up north by Mackinac, that there's a person that owns a bunch of houses up there that were registering up to 30 or more people for individual houses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you know those are real residents or real people, for that matter?
It's not possible.
No, they don't all live there. So that in and of itself makes it an illegal registration. But yeah, we had over 17,000 illegal duplicates. So these are people with the same name and the same address and the same birth year. We cut it many different ways to try and find these people. And then we deduped, which means we removed multiple instances of the same voter. So we still found over 17,000 people who appear to be duplicate voters. There's, a statute in Florida that requires people to be removed from the rolls if they haven't voted first of all, if they haven't voted in 2 general elections, they go on the list to potentially be removed. And then if they don't vote in the upcoming 2 general elections, there to be removed. So we found people that hadn't voted in 8+ years and were inactive. After the first 2 elections, they're made inactive. And then if they don't vote in those last 2 elections, they're supposed to be removed. So there were over 150,000 people on the rolls still that appear to, that they should have been removed from the rolls. So again, our rolls are not up to date. 41,000 people registered while the voter rolls were closed. That's a bit of a gray area. We don't know how they manage this. The rolls are supposed to be closed 29 days prior to the election. So people are still allowed to register, but they're not supposed to vote in the upcoming election. So we don't know how they manage that. 51 of those, so not a big number, but they did vote in the 22 general election. You can see over 400 had their registration date backdated, so it changed later, at a later time, and was backdated to make the registration date earlier. We're not sure why.
All the people that touch that part of it are guilty of high crimes at this point in time.
Yeah, and I've been trying to get the voter maintenance, the registration maintenance logs, and I requested that from our Secretary of State or Department of State, and all of a sudden I get a response from the legal office, the legal counsel, and they're acting like they don't know what that is, and how can you not know who is maintaining the registration rolls? And that's our Department of State in Florida. So they talked about Florida being the gold standard. Our 564 potentially invalid registrations, is that a clean voting system? Absolutely not. We have over almost 900 age discrepant voters, older than the oldest person known in Florida, or they registered, that was older than 110. Below that is registering before the age of 16. Over 500 of those, that's illegal. Going down further, we had Sunday registrations. Now this is going back before online registration, where you can register pretty much any day of the year. And this only looked prior to that coming into effect in Florida. And there were almost 20,000 people registered on a Sunday. We also backed out those registered in October of election years, so that, if they were working overtime to get people input, we took that out. And then federal holiday registrations, also a time when the registrations should be closed. We had over 20,000 registered then.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So how did that happen? We'd like to know. What's the explanation? Are those valid registrations? We question it. Somebody sneaking into the election system on a holiday and inserting those people. And then invalid names. We found a number of people with one letter last names, non-alpha characters in their names, things like Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse, John Doe, and that type of thing. So there were almost 13,000 of those.
Wow.
The thing we looked at is were the votes counted from eligible voters as required by the U.S. Constitution. So we took these registrants from Section 1 and looked at how many of them voted. Lo and behold, there were over 208,000 instances. And that includes the additional number of blank ballots reported. 88,635. I don't know if you've heard about the blank ballot issue.
No.
But we have somebody else who's doing great work here in Florida. Chris Gleason looked into blank ballots and has done a lot of reporting on it. So the funny thing about blank ballots, one of our Florida SOEs and Secretary of State tried to give the explanation that blank ballots were a blank page within a ballot that did not receive votes. That, so it would basically be undervotes on a page.
Wow.
Well, it doesn't make sense. I believe it's the EAC and ES&S both define blank ballots as an entirely blank ballot with no votes cast on any of the pages. Also, the number of pages of a ballot did not have any correlation to the number of blank ballots reported. Some counties reported 1 or 2 blank ballots, others reported tens of thousands. So extremely suspicious. Some of the more blue counties here in Florida appear to report more blank ballots, one of the larger ones anyway. Not saying that's necessarily indicative of anything, but it's a bit suspicious. So when we conducted our LNA testing here in my county, I attended and asked if blank ballots were, if a ballot was blank, if it notified the voter. And yes, our SOE made, a strong point about how the machines, the tabulators, are set to alert the voter if their ballot is deemed blank. Well, I watched the LNA testing, and sure enough, and her definition of a blank ballot is a ballot with no votes cast. And she also told me that, or one of the election workers told me that undervotes are not, the voter is not notified of an undervote. And again, undervotes would be if one page had no votes, you would notify the voter of that. But it was not set for that because a lot of people don't answer some of the, questions on the ballot, or, judge elections and things like that. So they do not alert people of undervotes. However, they do alert them for blank ballots. So that's, a little background there. There's more I could go into about blank ballots, but it's highly suspicious. How are those adjudicated? Are they decided by an individual later? Do they end up getting counted? Obviously, 88,000 people are not casting a blank ballot. Why bother? Why would you mail it back? Why would you go to the polls and not cast any votes? And, there has been no explanation given. And other states see these blank ballots as well.
It's just another example of something else that just doesn't set well. It's wrong, and they're not answering the questions, and then they're not fixing the problems.
Yep, exactly. So, our elections, as a result, continue to be invalid. We even took it to the step of, looking for the unique number of votes affected in this 208,000, and it was over 205,000, as you can see there. Another interesting point on our scorecard is that there were 7,796,000 votes counted, plus 916. That's how many were reported by the state of Florida. You can find it on federal election results websites and on Florida's and official websites. And when we looked in the voter history file, there were, and this was the December file, so the most recent following the election. So this is the number that would have been in existence, presumably, at the time the results were certified. Well, there were only 7,651,607 voters who voted in that history file, a difference of 145,000. So what's the explanation? Why don't those match? Oddly enough, by the January file, 130-some thousand had been added. Still not the whole 145,000, but more votes were recorded. And why was that done? Was that to try to match the numbers up? Were those real votes? What's the explanation there?
Wouldn't there, or shouldn't there have been like a document filed that said this was why this was adjusted? There should be, it shouldn't just pop up without some sort of documentation,
right?
On file. I mean, they should be able to pull that document up that there was a change made and this was why, to explain it. But you can't just do that and then after the fact, months and years later, just have it pop up and there's a change.
Right. And similar to, the changes to the voter registration logs, who's making those? where is this log file, that they're not sending, and acting if it doesn't exist. We're trying to find out at least who is responsible for maintaining the voter rolls at the county and state level.
And they won't tell you that.
Well, that was the last question I submitted. We'll see what their response is, if we get one. I have a lot of public records requests submitted in December of last year, asking about the certification process and different aspects of the certification of these machines. Our SOS came out and made a number of statements about how strong our certification process is. Well, there are a lot of questions around the certification process. The standards are from 2005 when we still had flip phones. And so I submitted a number of PRRs for that and have yet to hear, 4 months later, 4.5 months later. So yes, the gold standard in Florida is pretty well tarnished at this point, and a misnomer.
I'm not much of a DeSantis fan because he's got too many connections to World Economic Forum, quite honestly, and that's disturbing.
Well, and yeah, I mean, he championed voter integrity bill a couple of years ago, but I worked with Defend Florida to try and get new legislation passed this year, and the leadership did not want any more election integrity. And it's important issues, like even verifying citizenship is not really, you can get around that in Florida, and it's really just an attestation, that we want, I am a citizen of the U.S. And people are getting Social Security numbers when they cross the border, and you can register to vote with just the last 4 of a Social Security number. I saw
That's crazy.
That's a Help America or HAVV website, Help America Verify Voters or something like that. And there was, someone analyzed it, and there were a huge percentage of registrants that didn't have a real combination of information. Like you couldn't find that person. The Social Security number was off, or the other information was off. And they're not verifying those people either, apparently. It's ridiculous. So those are the types of things that we asked for in our resolution. I'll stop sharing now. But, the last point on this scorecard I'll cover quickly. Per the Help America Vote Act, the allowable machine error rate is 1 in 10 million ballot positions, or 1 in 125,000 ballots. So you can really look at that in terms of the entire election system. What is the error rate of the election system? We're saying there are 205,806 potential errors or invalid issues within the 2022 election. The allowable error rate of 1 in 125,000 ballots would be 62. So there are more than 205,000 potential extra errors and violations within the Florida 2022 election.
And none of these people involved in this are saying anything. And how many of them have been continually to say, "Oh, we've got this, never mind. Don't look over here. We have a completely safe and secure election."
Right.
That's a bunch of crap. We don't.
Oh, the first thing out of elected officials' mouth is always, "Oh, well, I thought Florida was a gold standard." And that's been, thrown out there as if, that is true. And it certainly isn't. And they're brushing things under the rug and acting as if.
Well, they use talking points instead of having evidence to support what they're saying. We're just supposed to believe them instead of bring the receipts, bring the paper.
Right.
We want to see why.
Right.
Wow, that's amazing.
The fact that they outright lie. I mean, what the definition given for blank ballots is clearly incorrect. It's a entirely blank ballot, and our SOE here in my county confirmed it.
Do you include with that report card? Do you include explanations of each of these sections?
We're not sharing it with the public. We're presenting it to elected officials, and we can answer questions as we present. And we're really going with the resolutions that we have developed based on the scorecard results.
Okay, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I'll share it with you at some point here. But
are the scorecards on United Sovereign Americans?
I believe one for New York is. I mean, they found millions of issues in the New York voter rolls. They even found an algorithm that showed how they were creating fictitious voters in the rolls and adding voter IDs.
Wow. So okay, I see your resolution here. I just clicked on that a minute, and I would love to see that the scorecard. I'm going to try to find that. I really enjoyed talking to Harry. He's an amazing individual.
Extremely knowledgeable on a lot of
outstanding. Truly.
Yeah, you learn a lot every time you talk with him.
Okay, here we go. Can I put the resolution up, or were you going to do that?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so here's the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Well done.
And here's the one for Florida. But it presents the issues, it summarizes the issues from the scorecard. And then, we ask officials to simply support conducting a legally valid 2024 election. You wouldn't think that would be that hard, would you?
Wouldn't think so.
No. So this one's from last year, but it's an example of New York's.
Okay, that's the last year one. I'm going to take that down. If you could put the one up that you're working on for Florida, or what you have, that's the current one, that would be great.
Let me open it here. 1 second.
This is some really great work. I think I'll call Harry today and see if I can get Harry on. And I would love to have Marley's number.
Sure, I can pick it up.
That would be great. It would be awesome to get both of them on, because, I really do think that people need to go to the source to hear from the people that actually do the actual work. I think that's very important, instead of having some media figure spin it, which media figures are great to bring things to the forefront, but we have to not get the people that step in the way, that we actually need to go back to the source. And I think that's really what's wrong with most of our media right now, is they just have people will grab onto things and start spinning it, and that's never a good option.
Yeah, that's, I guess, the problem with citizen-driven media. There's not necessarily as much research or confirmation done, but it still manages to, on the whole, be a lot more accurate than the mainstream.
Well, I think everybody needs to do their own research, quite honestly. But if we're going to have, if we're going to be media or have media, we need to bring people on that are doing the actual work. Just regular, normal people, without scripting it, just getting out there and talking about it to find out what's real instead of what's spun.
Right. Well, yeah, people, I think on your show, you typically find the people that have done the research, right? And
I sure try to. I've had a few people on that have media channels, and they're just interested in building an audience. Mm-hmm. So, but it takes a while to sift through people. And quite honestly, I talk to everyone, because you're going to find those nuggets of truth. And I'm not about building silos or teams. I want to sift through everyone to see who's actually doing the work, talking to them, and giving them a place to actually be acknowledged and have their work put out there, so that everyone has the opportunity to go to the source. It's a lot of work to do. It really is.
I know, and you've been doing an amazing job.
Well, thank you. I'm hopefully to be helpful to all, all the wonderful heroes like you that just sit quietly with your heads down and work. It's just truly inspiring.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. So this is our resolution. This one's specific to Florida. But here we quote, each of these points is based on existing laws, whether it be civil rights or election law or other. But you can see number one, whereas it is a recognized civil right in the United States for every citizen to have free and fair elections, and the right of suffrage can be denied by a debasement or dilution of the weight of a citizen's vote, just as effectively as wholly prohibiting the free exercise of the franchise. So that's saying, if you have bad votes injected into the system, that's denying a person of their civil right of suffrage or right to vote. So that's dating back to 1964, very straightforward. And whereas it is a duty of our election officials to guarantee our elections are accurate and free from distortion or manipulation, Congress seeks to guard the election of members of Congress, so this is federal election law, against any possible unfairness by compelling everyone concerned in holding the election to a strict and scrupulous observance of every duty devolved upon him while so engaged. The evil intent consists in disobedience to the law. So that dates all the way back to 1888, and that sort of speaks to the fact that, if you're negligent or ignorant and still do not conduct the election appropriately, that's not an excuse. It's just as bad as nefariously taking action against a valid election. So down below, our constitutional system of representative government only works when the following four tenets of an election are upheld. Voter rolls must be accurate. This is from NIVRA, or National Voter Registration Act. Votes counted must be from eligible voters. So here is where we have a big issue with non-citizens being registered to vote. That alone will create invalid election results. And the number of votes counted must equal the number of voters who voted. So even after they added the 130-some thousand voters to our rolls in January of 23, it still did not match the number of votes reported in the 22 election. So that's a problem. And then there can be no more than 1 in 125,000 ballots in error by the voting system, and that's per HAVA. So this is where we summarize the issues for Florida's 22 general election.
Quick question. Can you drill down on, say, specific precincts or townships with this information and see what the error rate was within the townships?
Yeah, we had an amazing data team that spent months working on this. We had, many queries into the voter rolls and the voter history files, and had to merge those and do all kinds of tricky things. Big shout out to John and Frank and Janine who helped with that. Yes, we could drill down to the county level.
All right.
And we would know the precincts. We're not doing that for the resolution. I mean, if you start pointing out county issues, people get defensive. They try to start explaining away the numbers. Not that,
Every time I've talked to somebody that's in a position, they all make excuses for things to basically cover it up instead of saying, "Tell me more. What are you concerned with?" I've never heard one of them say it. They don't give you an opportunity to talk. They're not interested in hearing what's a problem in their area, and they just defend themselves. They refuse to look further because they're convinced they did everything right.
Correct. And so we choose not to get into that defensive mode by focusing on the county level. Okay. That's exactly what happens. And, they lose the forest for the trees, so to speak. But here we summarize, out of the 205,000, there were 117,000 votes cast by ineligible or uncertain registrants. And then we have the 88,000 blank ballots, which we are quite certain is an impossibility. The 145,000 more votes counted than voters who voted, and 205,000 apparent voting violations in excess of the legal standard of system accuracy. So we go on to a number of other points, and then here's what we ask for in the resolution, and these should be pretty straightforward asks, right? That no one, especially elected officials, should not support. I mean, they should definitely be behind these. So proof of citizenship and identity to register and vote, not anonymous attestation, such as Florida currently allows. Documented chain of custody on every ballot, regardless of entry source. Now, what is the chain of custody for a mail-in ballot? There is none.
There's absolutely none.
No, it goes into the post office system. These aren't even tracked. It's not a certified, mailing. It's just sent into the system. They don't really even do a good job of, they do track how many are sent out versus how many are returned, but all of those, the difference is just ballots out there in the Ethernet. Who knows where they end up, or if they come back under someone else's name. They found in Georgia, it came out in trials that there were 100 and some thousand ballots, I believe, that were not mail-in ballots that were never folded. There were over 100,000 that didn't have any signature verification performed on them. So if you go back to Harry Hari's testimony, he covers a lot of that, and it just shows how the Georgia election should never have been certified, along with many other states, if not all.
Could you send me that link on Harry's testimony, please?
Certainly.
Wonderful.
So that's chain of custody, secure ballots, so that you know which ballot was sent to which individual. And so when they come back, you can make sure that it was the ballot sent to them. That would go a long way to securing, if we're sticking with mail-in ballots, which we shouldn't, but if we do, this would help greatly in, securing that. And at least secure those, the mail-in, but we also there have been people who found, ballots from those who supposedly voted in person that are on different paper than that was officially approved. There are printers in mail-in votes centers. There's so many things that are wrong currently in our election system, right? But, they, again, like you say, try to explain it away and act like you're crazy for bringing up valid concerns. So number 4, voter rolls certified accurate 30 days before the start of early voting. I believe it's federal law that does allow any eligible voter to still be registered. Florida at least cuts off voter registration for elections 29 days prior. But as I said earlier, we don't know what the system is for stopping them from actually casting a vote in that election. And then number 5, systems, machines, security measures, procedures, infrastructure, policy, and conduct are required to be compliant with the law regarding certification, testing, operational validation, and operational implementation. Again, follow the law is what we're asking for. Follow existing laws. And then a scientifically randomized audit of real ballots must be performed and meaningfully witnessed. There's such a small percentage of actual ballots that are audited in Florida. I'm not sure what the level is in other states, but they only look at a few counties and a few of the ballots. Why can't we, in every precinct at the end of election night, do a manual count of a randomly chosen race and verify that the numbers in the tabulator match? That right there would put a kibosh on any day of voting malfeasance on, or errors in the tabulation of those votes. They could do the same thing for all the other, early voting and for the mail-in ballots as well. Granted, the mail-in ballots, the whole chain of custody thing needs to be resolved first. But
may I ask you a question here? I've got a couple of questions. Why did you decide not to go after the removal of electronic machines?
Because we're focusing on current laws and trying to get officials to simply follow the current law. It's a lot easier, the election strategy that they've developed was, highly thought through, and it's a lot easier to force them to follow existing law than to try and enact and change laws in the short time we have left before the 2024 election.
Good answer.
Mm-hmm. So number 8, adjudication must be signed off by party witnesses. None of this closing off the windows where people couldn't watch the adjudication or the ballot processing like they did in, was it Michigan, I believe, or Pennsylvania?
Yeah, Michigan.
Yep. So, that is illegal. And yet they allowed the election to be certified.
Michigan is the epicenter of election villainy right here.
And what happened to the, wasn't it the truck that left Pennsylvania and brought ballots to Michigan? What about that? There was
why didn't they look at the truck, the records of where the truck, anybody that does any type of transportation realizes that there's always records. There's records on everything. Why didn't they question the drivers? Why didn't they go into this? Because they didn't want to know. They didn't want anybody to know.
And the driver came forward as a whistleblower that his truck was full of ballots, that he parked it, that it, disappeared overnight, and he doesn't know even, where those ended up. And I'm pretty sure I know. So number 9, end-to-end audits must be allowed by qualified, insured, and bonded security, forensics, or financial auditors. And again, my off-the-cuff statements are not related to USA. Those are my personal views. So the resolution are the USA points. Okay.
As an individual, any statements that that anybody says are their own. So I understand that.
Yeah, well, you never know who's listening, right? And then the reconciliation will include the vote count, ballots, adjudication, CVRs, ballot count, voter count, custody transfer, and all other paper and electronic systems, including system logs, if applicable. So, this should be done regardless before they certify elections, right? Our audits in Florida are conducted after they certify our elections. It's in our statutes. It's utterly insane. Why would you?
That's the way the legislatures work all over the country. They don't even read the bills. They don't read anything. They just stamp it because somebody tells them, you got to vote with the party or you're out of here. We're going to take you out of the committees. We're going to disable you and we're going to kneecap you.
Exactly.
So they don't even read anything. They don't even know what they're signing. No. I don't even know if they can read anything, because they haven't proven that they can. It's not part of their standard operating procedures.
Yeah, you have to wonder. And then if the total of all unique variances above is more than 10% of the margin of victory, a new election must be held in the state for those candidates affected. Waiver requirements is not allowed. Only end-to-end system compliance can guarantee the intent of the people is accurately recorded. Just obey the law. I mean, that's all we're asking for. Follow the current laws on the books that you are required to follow, and do not certify these elections unless that's the case. I mean, that's the state of our country right now. It's so pathetic. We also have a lot of references at the end here for each of the points that we're asking about. So you can go back and see that these are real laws that we're referencing and that these points are required, and people are breaking the law by not following it. So
outstanding.
So that is our resolution for Florida.
That's outstanding. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Can you share that resolution with me directly? Because I'd like to have a copy of that. Because I've got the old one here and it doesn't look like it's on your website. But I would really like to have also the contact people from the people in Michigan. If you could share that with me today, and so I can kind of tuck this all nicely together, and maybe we can get a bunch of them from Michigan on Brandenburg News Network in order for them to have their voices heard and get more people to jump on board. So I believe in looking at all things, whether you're going towards trying to hold them to current laws, even if they're not good laws on the elections that are on the books, or policies or procedures. They may not even be laws. I have a feeling that most of the most of the nonsense happening that is a Jonathan Brader process, which is he's the director of Board of Elections as well as chairman of the board for Eric. So in his words, we're making up policies on the fly.
Well, and
a lot of these state policies, I don't know, but
a lot of these state policies and statutes are not in compliance with federal law, which overrides it, right? So
they're illegal. They just say it and expect everybody to follow it. And they are literally committing all sorts of violations of the law.
Exactly. Very true.
Well, it's outstanding work. Is everything I've seen you touch has just been unbelievably well documented and thought out, and I really appreciate that. So, do you have any other things to add to this? We can go back to the website here.
Yeah, I was just going to remind people you can learn more at uniteforfreedom.com. You can sign up to volunteer. You can donate. Again, this is what I feel is our best chance for having valid elections in 2024. If that's important to you, this cause is the one you should pay attention to, in my opinion.
Well, and I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that God literally will put on your heart exactly what he wants you to do, whatever your personal mission is, as well as what he wants you to do, because the same path may not be the exact same path for everyone. So I acknowledge the fact that there's many roads all roads go to Rome, right? And so eventually it all ties back to the truth, and the truth stands on its own merit. And it all goes to the same place. Truth has to stand, and we may get there different ways, and we may find little bit of flaws or chinks in their armor, and that they've got as their defenses on the steel that they have. But there's a lot of different work that's being done in different directions, and I think it's important. I think the craziness that was found out by Peter with the smurfing and such, that all needs to come forward. And that's just another part of this. There are tentacles of this beast system that's in place. Has literally got little tentacles or cells that work together, just like any organization. Organizations are made up of cells.
Have you been following the Sheriff Darleaf stories?
Oh, of course. I'm friends with Dar. So
good.
Yeah, he's been on here several times, and
Serbian programmers are writing our election system code. How about that?
And listening to Dominion executives in their own words by what Dar went ahead and published in all the documentation, what they said. The director, I believe his name is Comer, says we suck, when they knew that they were none of the machines were passing test because their modems failed, which by his own words, they're connected to the internet, which to all of you election deniers, which are the clerks in the state, because they're election deniers, because they're looking at what they did. Oh no, we did this perfectly. You don't have enough information, and they're not willing to look at it. It's being flipped above their pay grade, and sometimes below their pay grade, with people stuffing the ballot boxes and such. They're looking at a slice and saying, we did everything right. No, you did. You might think you did.
And again, like the last time I was on your show, we showed the official Edison published by the New York Times results along with the matching CITL data. And all of that shows it was set by an algorithm. How do you do that without online, internet connection? Apparently they're funneling that all the way back to the precinct level somehow, right? And
there were.
Apparently they're tying it through the entire election system to create an algorithmically set and produced result for the election. And it was matching percentages grabbed from the total votes, overlaying batches of votes. And, clearly.
Fractional voting. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
It's endless. So anyway, getting off topic, but thank you.
It really is the same topic, because we're looking at as a whole, though we drill down on these individual cells of what went wrong. When you start knitting this whole thing together, it becomes one one big spider web of corruption. Then
You're
you can
right.
start connecting the people who sit together and are working together to subvert our elections. And once you start seeing these subversion cells working together and they're small parts and it's organized, this is like an orchestra of steal the vote, of cheat the American people, and denying those. And I'm really curious to see how many down ballot candidates who had their elections stolen from them. I mean, we focus on President Trump because he's in the news all the time. And I respect the rightful president of our United States, which is President Donald J. Trump. There's no two ways about it. I have tremendous respect for the man. However, with that said, we're fighting not necessarily for President Trump. We're fighting for that office. And we're fighting for the vote of the American people. And each and every single American was under attack during those last two elections, and we can prove it.
Well, look at the Marxist people they've installed through these fictitious election processes. You're under a governor who's one of those. It's ridiculous. I mean, they installed a Marxist in Brazil, and now they're trying to shut down Twitter there and the freedom of speech. So, and that was, the same voting system you mentioned used there.
I'll say it. I mean, they're out to sue anybody that talks about it. But we've got Dominion, we've got Hart, we've got ES&S in the state of Michigan. It's all of them, and that are a problem. But we know that Dominion has Serbian programmers, right?
Yeah, and I love how people, call us election deniers when they've spent all of 10 minutes looking at election results and just believing them. Well, what started me in this whole fight is that I was able to download from the New York Times the Edison data, right, for Pennsylvania. It's the only state the files would work and I could download. I could see in the three bigger counties that the percentages for the batches were repeating, and they were all staying almost exactly the same, which threw up a lot of red flags to me. And then lo and behold, when we got the overall results, you could see that those had the repeating percentages, and they were grabbing and overlaying batch results with the total vote percentages. So anyway, we have videos out there on the Enigma Intel channel you can watch on Rumble.
Would you like to bring that up right now or not?
Oh, that's all right. I think, we've talked enough today, but could talk endlessly, right?
I think it's important to go down. This is one of the reasons why I do long interviews, because I really want to give people enough time to explain what they know, because we've got to stop with the headlines. We need to know actually the material and be respectful enough of the people that are willing to talk about it, have done the work, that we have a complete picture of what they're talking about, and not just some sort of headline that somebody can twist around on us because we don't know the information.
Yeah, and I don't have kids, but it amazes me that there are so many people out there with kids and grandkids that don't see that we are headed down a Marxist path, if we're not there already, of communist control of everything, CBDC and everything else that WEF is pushing to try and take away our sovereignty and inflict this, totalitarian government on us. And these people don't seem to see that's what's coming, and that's what their kids and grandkids are facing. So wake up, America.
That's what we are handing to our kids and grandkids. This is because we have not had the guts to go after this, or the knowledge in the past. We've got it now to go after this and give them something that's a legacy that we can be proud of. I'm pretty sure that none of us want to hand this on to the next generation or the next generation to pay for all the mistakes, to have to deal with the fight that if this thing would have been righted in the 70s, if we would have gone back to the 70s and saw this before we got down in this morass as bad as we have, we would have had less of a structure to fight. Right now, this is a huge organized crime structure that they have in place.
Yeah,
now we're battling a beast that is boss level, a boss level beast. Can it be defeated? Absolutely. Absolutely it can. But everybody's going to have to decide that they're going to step forward and do the right thing. Everyone needs to be out there voting. Every single person needs to be in front of their township, their municipalities, their county, and their state. Every single person needs to be communicating. If we flooded them with this is not going to happen and this is why, if we had just amazing amounts of people that followed the legal process, not the scream and yell and act like a bunch of spoiled little kids in the street protesting, but actually doing a legal process. The protests, first of all, are not guaranteed by the Constitution. Not at all. We have the right to redress our grievances. That doesn't say go out and riot and act like an idiot out in the street and infringe on other people's rights. It says it's a lawful process. Well, to do that, that means that people have to raise their hand, be statesmen, and walk forward and say, what's the process? How do we hold them accountable? Well, I think you've got a great process here by having the resolution and communicating with them. But if we back in the late, I got to think, early 90s, I'm a homeschool mom, so I homeschooled all my children, right? They were trying to throw us all in jail here in the state of Michigan. So with homeschool legal defense and such, we literally shut the Capitol switchboard down, and they turned all their fax machines off for 3 days because they ran out of paper, because there was such an incredible response to this. Now everybody out there is shooting arrows at the very people that would step forward to save this republic, and they refuse to get in because they're so afraid to be wrong or to follow somebody that is off the projected path, like the Democrats, Republicans. Pick your group to associate with. It doesn't matter what it is. Instead of focusing on a legal process to hold them accountable as per laid out by the Constitution and the legal processes within this nation. If we could unite everybody behind that, boom, we got this thing. We could turn it around in New York minute.
And USA is a nonpartisan entity and initiative. So, whatever political party you're in, if you want honest and real elections, this is the solution.
Well, I can sure tell you I'm really thankful for all the work you've done. Let's say a quick prayer here, and I thank you for bearing with me here a little bit. I've got 2 things to do today that I have to get to, and I know you're so busy and your time is so valuable. I don't want to take any more time from you because you got research to do. So let's say.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you, Donna, and for all you do.
Yes, you're welcome. Let's say a quick prayer a minute, and we'll close out with that, and then we'll go to our days. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Todd and Bill and Ralph and everyone that's standing with them, Marley and Harry and all these wonderful people who truly have laid down their time and put it into an effort which is in service to you and this nation. And God, it's God, family, country. It's you and our families and this country, and we really want to be able to hand the reins over to the next generation and have it be an honest and fair process for everyone, defending the rights of every single person, not just those that are in the political elite who really hate all of us. And we want people that step forward who are committed to you, who are talking to you, who are praying for this nation, and who draw you close to them so that they're doing what you want to be done, not what we want to be done as human beings, because we're flawed. We're screwed up in so many different ways. And that we acknowledge our faults before you and ask that you would lead us into proper processes that you laid out. You laid it out in the Bible. We just need to go back to what you laid out before us, which is something that honors and respects people who all you've created, and the uniqueness that you built within each and every person. Thank you so much. Help us to hear you and listen to you today. We're thankful for being able to have a relationship with you, and want to let you know that we love you. You're a great friend to us, and we want to be a great friend to you also. In Jesus Christ's precious name we pray, amen. So there you go. So everybody, the part of the show, go to brandenburgforgovernor.com, because I am the best non-conceder who has ever not conceded in the history of the United States. I declare it. And so to say that, we're going to go forward, and we've got a lot of wonderful things that are happening. We can be so grateful this day for every part of that. So God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. It's your choice. Get in the game. Let's find a thing to do, every single one of us, and support people like Todd and Peter and Harry. And I can't even name all the names of people that have just done some wonderful things for this nation. But don't be afraid to talk to people you disagree with. It's your job to turn them around if they're going in the wrong direction, not to just let them continue to beach their ship on dry ground here, so that they're struggling. We want to help those people around us, and we don't need to agree with everybody, but we should be out there talking to them. The truth will come to the light if we don't just sit in our echo chambers, but reach out to individuals. So have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow. And I have, let me think, I've got to think of who I've got. Chris Darzinski. He is I've probably murdered his name. He's on How to Fix a City tomorrow. It's going to be great. So have a great day, and we'll see you all later.
Thanks, Donna.
Thanks, Todd.